Test. Oh, great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our agenda review. Colleagues, people watching, our directors and staff, thank you. As we work through this little experiment of blending public works and legal and finance, we're going to be reviewing the agenda. Everybody should have received it by last Friday. Plenty of time to look through and see the attachments and the explanations. So we'll just get started. We're going to do number one, we're going to defer the presentation to the council meeting on March 1st. I don't think that's an issue with anybody on council, so we'll just move right along. We'll move to the discussion items. Director Dame? Number 2? Do we have any questions? Well, let's wait for a brief explanation. Great, thank you.
Madam President, members of the board or council, thank you for the opportunity just to kind of brief on this. The airport board, based on their desire, are requesting some ordinance changes in here. The ordinance change would add 2 additional members to the board, would allow up to 7 members. Currently, the airport board is a 5-member board. Sorry, Jason, I jumped up your spot. Within that, it would allow for those 2 to be appointed from outside of city limits to a multi-county potential area. It gives the mayor and council the ability to consider up to 2 additional from that area, but not a requirement to add them. There was additional language changes within there just as a cleanup to deal with things like quorums. And then also there was a change in the ordinance to eliminate the ARF service requirement in there. And one of the things that I would mention on that is that's not a reflection of the fire department. That is a reflection of us dealing with language in the ordinance. Currently, under the grant assurances of the FAA that we have to live by and that we get and sign every time we get a grant, having something that restricts our ability to be able to either look at shopping the service around, bidding it, or anything like that. This restricts us within the current language of only being able to work with our CFD on this. And with that, under the grant assurances, I could argue that it's put the airport in a situation where we are giving up our rights on that. And you know, we do need the flexibility to be able to address, like you would not buy a large piece of snow removal equipment on only a single bid. Now, I have to tell you, we have a good working relationship with the fire department, and it's not our desire to have the council do this just so we can throw this on the street for a bid. We're asking you to allow us to work together. Don't force us by ordinance to work together. And this ordinance was put in place about 5-6 years ago before I arrived, and I think it's ill-advised, and we're asking for council's consideration of removing the ordinance piece.
Open to questions. Mr. Reifenbach, go ahead.
You're talking about the ordinance requiring the fire department to be the provider at the airport?
Yes.
Can you explain to us why that's an issue?
So based under the grant assurances that we sign every time we take federal money, we're not really necessarily, you know, there's no limit on what it is that we can pay for that service in the ordinance itself. It just says that we have to buy it. So if you look at and apply the grant assurances to this, if the fire department decided that 100% of the airport's revenue was what they needed to provide that, we'd be required to pay it. So it puts us in a situation where we have to justify our cost to the FAA. We have to justify what we're buying from any other entity. What's made at the airport under the FAA's eyes has to stay at the airport. So based on that, under the ordinance, if you look at it from the potentials that the ordinance would have, there's nothing that limits what it is that we could physically pay for that service, or requires that, puts us in a situation where we're paying a fair value for the services that are provided.
So I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to try to understand, because this has come up before. This
Yep.
is not the first time. The reason that ordinance was put into place because they wanted to basically eliminate the fire department from the airport. Is it something then, at that point, that you put out to bid? I mean, how do you justify a price other than you have another price somebody's willing to charge? Is
again,
that what you're trying to get to, is you want to justify what the fire department charges the airport for their services?
we want to ensure that there's a fair market value for what the services that are providing, that we can all hold our head up at the end of the day and say the price that we're paying for the service that we're getting is appropriate.
So how would that be justified? How would you do that?
That can be justified through finding other bid contracts. That could be justified for putting it out for bid. There's a couple different ways of going about getting that.
Okay, I would want to know how the fire department feels about that. This has been visited by a council in the past, and it got pretty heated and pretty ugly. So, I mean, if we're gonna go out and bid the fire department services, Rapid City has there's some things they don't even put out for bid. You know, one of them is professional services that we don't even bid them. We just say, this is what we're gonna pay. I mean, here's what the job entails. This is what we're gonna pay. And I'm not sure, I wanna understand what we're getting into before I go down this road again, so.
So back in 2015 is when this ordinance came about. And it was while they were doing an RFP process, or it was requested to do an RFP process, and that's where that all came from. Like I've mentioned a couple times to a few, realistically, I agree with Patrick. The ordinance is probably ill-advised for the council and for the city. I'm not the attorney. He might be able to answer that a little better than I, but forcing that probably isn't the most appropriate, and I agree with that. And I don't feel like we need to have an ordinance to prove that we're the right agency to be out there. Patrick did mention about looking at other contracts and what their cost is, and we've done that. And we're going to continue to discuss this going forward.
So where are we at with that? I mean,
Realistically, this portion of it, I don't think is where the conversation has to go between whether the fire department's the best to be there. And we're just starting that. That's when we were supposed to start in January 2021. It's the end of February, and we've talked a couple times briefly on trying to put together a couple meetings for that,
so basically, we're looking for a process that says we substantiate what the fire department is charging.
Laura?
Okay. There's other questions, so I'll yield.
Mr. Nordstrom, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Gentlemen, would you reassure me on the grant assurances? That's the concern that I have, is that an explanation of why the ordinance is and how that jeopardizes the grant assurances. So I don't want to see you lose that potential of the grants.
So under Grant Assurance 25 is the federal grant assurance that we're really dealing with here. And, based on that, when we sign the grant assurances, which we sign with every federal grant we take, we say that we'll abide by that. Under that grant assurance, it deals with revenue and the potential for revenue diversion. And with that, the sponsor's responsibility, which is the airport board, the council, to ensure that the money made at the airport stays at the airport or is used and justified how it should be justified. And that's there to protect all of us. It's there to prevent misuse of public funds from misuse of airport funds. So when we look at what sponsors' actions are prohibited, the transferring money from the airport fund to the sponsor's general fund or non-airport special purpose fund, or using airport revenue for any prohibited purpose identified in Section 6 of the airport revenue use policy.
Patrick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize, I don't mean to get down into the weeds of this, but what I'm interested in is the FAA is telling us this ordinance is not a good resolution either. The ordinance that we're going to be removing is not a good thing for the airport.
Right now, what we're asking is for the board and council to address this before we have any FAA. Before someone makes a complaint or someone steps in to say we have an issue, we think we should willfully address this. And all I can do is sit here and give you the best advice as airport director to say, I know there was good deed done in putting the ordinance in place, but I think we would have a tough time in having the discussion over whether or not that is.
Sure.
To maybe make it easier to understand, it's no different than if you would have an ordinance saying that I'm forced to use a certain CPA firm to do my audit every single year, no matter what the cost is. So this is basically taking that forced relationship out of the contract and putting it back into more competitive.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you very much. So are we talking about emergency response and firefighting services and that kind of thing?
That's correct.
Okay, so who else would bid on that if it wasn't the Rapid City Fire Department?
So there are various different private agencies. There's two in particular that do provide this at airports nationwide as well.
So right now, we're paying our fire department to provide those services, correct? The Rapid City Airport is paying the Rapid City Fire Department because we're all part of the city of Rapid City providing services. This would allow that to not take place anymore and would just go to the lowest bidder?
No, that's not the case. Again, depending on how we look at it, right now what the ordinance does is the ordinance gives us no flexibility to do this. In the airport at the time, understanding that there was some address done at that, the airport was looking around at what the costs were to ensure that they were paying a fair price at that time. That's where the ordinance came out of. So, again, we want to be able to make sure that we're justifying the costs. We want to make sure that we've got a mechanism to work together. We think they do a fantastic job. So, it's not to look at it and say the lowest cost. We don't have to necessarily select the lowest cost. It'd be something like lowest and best, or whatever it is that works best for us. But again, it gives, this is a service that is regulated. It's regulated by the federal government, how it's conducted, what they do, and there are service providers out there. So right now, this is not for an attempt for us to run to the street and throw a request for proposals on the street. This is an ordinance piece that we're asking that don't put that requirement on us and leave us the ability to be able to work together on it.
But you would go out for bids, I assume, for
No.
services, or how would you pursue other providers?
So right now, we have an MOU with them, and I believe the intention is, and Patrick and I have talked about this, is to discuss that and negotiate that term, meaning the amount that we're going to pay. And I think basically, if we can't come to an agreement, that's when they'd go to an RFP. But removing the ordinance, either way, he could decide at the end of the year to do that. And that's, it's the airport's prerogative, as our contract is up in December 31st, 2021. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stroman wants to address this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it looks like in this proposed ordinance that we're striking the last paragraph, or your recommendation is to strike that last paragraph, 2.72.115, is that right? But there's nothing that's going to be put in place of that? So is that just, you just want us to leave that silent, or do you want to have something else in there for implementing those ARFF services?
Madam President, Council Member Stroman, this was a direct add. This language didn't exist prior to the previous piece, and that was done, like I said, about 6 years ago as a direct add, and we're asking for a direct removal.
Anything else? Great. Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Dame, question for you. So this is getting off of that topic on it and talking about the board makeup of extending from 5 to 7. Couple of things. So absolutely, we're a regional airport. By expanding that, do people have the other, I guess, 2 members that might represent the region have stake in the airport, financial stake like Rapid City does? Who are they representing? Can you give some of the rationale behind that?
Madam President, Councilman Solomon, at this point, no. The answer to that would be no. If we, again, looking at the other council or the other counties that would be allowed in this, under the current scenario, no, there would not be a stake put in. From our standpoint, we look at it as we are a regional facility. We want regional opinions on how we can best serve the region. Now, whether or not that changes in the future and a regional authority is put into place, that would be something that would allow for more stake in the cost of the airport. But when you do look at, right now, there's no taxpayer dollars locally that go into the airport. We are self-sustaining. And so we do have a lot of people from the outskirts who are paying into the operation of the airport with things like parking dollars, contributing to the restaurant, the gift shop, those things. So there is some contribution to that.
So federally, with a regional airport, there's no requirement of a regional authority for a municipal airport?
No, that is a state and local piece if that's the desire.
My only concern is opening up our boards to people outside of the city limits, not just the airport board. I wonder if it sets any kind of precedent or not, or what we're okay with or not. Obviously, there are certain things that are regional. We have a MPO, which is our Metropolitan Planning Organization. Obviously, that's the region working together for transportation needs. That's a great thing. If the airport requires that, obviously we'll do that. That's my only hesitation, is not the makeup of the board, or that we wouldn't have input, because obviously how Rapid City goes, so goes the region, and vice versa. So I certainly want to encourage the growth, and travel in this community obviously helps with economic development and everything else. I just wonder, by adding 2 members to the board, that's pretty bold voice to add to the board for another entity that may not have the stakes in it that Rapid City has. I guess I'm open to hearing your thoughts on the benefits to Rapid City and the airport in particular of adding 2 more members outside of residents of Rapid City.
As Madam President, Jason, I think, again, this comes into, again, we really feel, the board feels that we serve a regional area. We serve Western South Dakota. And as we look at how we can serve those areas better, not just Rapid City, because we do serve Rapid City very well as well. We want to make sure that we are doing everything we can, and we are working in partnership with our communities around us as well.
Would it be fair to say that you think this will help promote the growth of the airport operations?
Yeah, I do think that is a fair statement.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I yield.
Mr. Weifenbach, did you have
Thank you,
some
Madam
comments?
Chair.
Okay.
And, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the thought process, but I do share some concerns of Alderman Solomon's. And if you take the board from 5 to 7, that's, 2 out of the 7 that would be outside the community. When you guys make a decision, do you ever have to have that decision approved by the city council? Like, say if you decided to go out for RFPs and you wanted to get rid of the fire department, you could make that decision on your own. That board of 7 people could make that decision. Is that correct or incorrect?
Madam President, Ron, the board has been pretty, the council has given the board to be able to make a lot of the decisions when they're financial decisions or selling land. The finances are approved by the city council, and the purchasing and sale of land are approved by the city council. You trust the airport board
But,
with the-
yeah, I think you're posing a hypothetical position. I asked a simple question of, if you made that call, would you make that on your own? And the city, the citizens of Rapid City that voted these people in would have no say if you decided to change the fire department from the fire department to a private sector. I mean, I get, it's just like anybody who gets married. I love this person forever, and I'm gonna be married for the rest of my life. I've been down this road before with the fire department and with the board, and the board changes, as we know. The fire department chief changes. Right now, you guys have a great relationship, which I respect and I completely understand. But one of the things that we have to be cautious of is getting into a situation that's going to rear its ugly head down in the future. And honestly, I'm a person that likes bids. I know when I talked about earlier, there's contracts the city does that they don't require bids because of professional people. In my mind, a lot of people just doing the work are professionals, whether they're builders or whatever they are. But my question still remains, if you guys decide to make that change, do you have to bring it to the city council to make that change?
Madam President, Ron, no.
That answers my question, and I just want my colleagues to understand, when we go down this road, right now, we have a great relationship. Things are going good. Things can change. They have changed. I sat through some nasty, ugly conversations and meetings, and part of that's what came out of that ordinance, because somebody at the airport on the board or whatever didn't like whoever was working at the fire department. That's how it all got started. It seemed real petty and real innocent, but that's how it all came about. And then it started to rear its ugly head, and then it became a power struggle, and it was a bad situation. It wasn't good for the airport, wasn't good for the fire department, wasn't good for the citizens of Rapid City. And then adding 2 people from outside the community that don't have skin in the game, that's a tough pill for me to swallow. And I think that my constituents might have a hard time with that. I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I think there's other creative ways to get that same type of input from those people. So I'll yield, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, good discussion so far. Anything else? Mr. Evans, go ahead.
I just have a couple quick questions for the chief. It's not going on. There it is. Just 2 quick ones. Are you capable of providing all the services necessary at the airport?
Yes.
Do you wish to provide all those services to our airport?
Yes.
That's all I need to know.
Great, thank you. And of course, we do have some time between now and the council meeting on Monday to look at this. And I personally had some good conversations in emails with Mr. Nordstrom and Chief Culberson, so thank you. Great discussion. Okay, we're moving right along. Community Development 3 and 4. Director Young,
I
Vicki
will
Fisher.
turn some time over to Vicki Fisher.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. So the first item up is ordinance amendment to create a new platting process known as the transfer plat. We had been approached over the years by developers who sometimes had a parcel of land that they could not legally transfer, but they didn't want to develop it. They wanted to sell it to someone else, or maybe they just wanted to change the name of, put it into an LLC different than the one they currently had, which protected themselves financially. Or maybe it was the rancher who wanted to sell part of his property to a developer, but they didn't want to be involved in the infrastructure discussion and signing the agreements and going through all of that. More recently, we've had a developer come in and sit down with us and talk through how it could be used and how we protect ourselves so that if we create this where it allows someone to create a lot that would be known as a restricted lot, that will be platted as that restriction, and someone would buy it, how are they aware that before they do anything, that they've got to go through the replat and address those subdivision improvements? And so this has been vetted pretty well from the developer's viewpoint and trying to protect that potential buyer. And in this case, what we came up with is, in order to do this, they would have to enter into a restrictive covenant with the city that would be recorded that identifies that, just that, before they could get a building permit, a grading permit, rezone the property, or do any step forward that would allow for development, that this new owner would have to replat the property. And as a part of that, we would then look at all the typical subdivision improvements and bring those forward. So that's what this does, and just kind of a little fill-in, there's also a House bill that is coming forward to the state legislature that's going to require municipalities to create this process. Sioux Falls has had this process in place for about a year. In visiting with their chief planner, they said that it's been working extremely successfully. I did send them our proposed ordinance, and they have indicated that they're actually going to make some changes to adopt some of ours, and one of them being that we're going to call it out as a restricted lot. And if any of you have looked at a deed or pulled something up on Rapid Map and you see a drainage lot or an open space lot, the use is identified. We quickly latch onto that and go, you know, I better call someone. What can I do with this? And the intent is, by requiring that it be called restricted lot A or M or whatever, that the public in general will know that this is unusual. We need to see why it's restricted.
Great, great explanation. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Thank you very much, Vicki. Do you know what House bill that is that you talked about?
Do you remember, Wade, what that number was? Lord knows we've received so many emails on it, I should have it memorized. We believe it's 1235.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
That's all. Thank you.
Surrender. Okay, number 4.
Pauline's confirmed it, Madam Chair.
Great. Number 4.
Number 4, this is an ordinance that's just really a cleanup. Right now in our residential zoning districts for low density 1 and 2, we have a provision that says that when you're platting a property, you need to create a lot that abuts right-of-way or public street a minimum distance of 25 feet. And that allows for ample spacing of driveways, utility corridors, etc. We always thought it applied to also medium-density residential and high-density residential, and we had a very kind developer come forward with a layout that did not meet that requirement, and it was very unusual. And when we pointed out he needed to revise it, he pointed out that medium-density residential didn't include it, and that was an oops. So what this is really doing is cleaning it up, where we're now applying that same standard not only to LDR 1 and 2, but also to medium-density residential and high-density residential.
Great. Mr. Nordstrom.
Thank you. For Ms. Fisher, if I may. Ms. Fisher, the explanation that we ran across here is, my understanding was primarily cul-de-sacs. And the way some of the cul-de-sacs in the past were formed, platted, whatever the term is, correct term is, that they were making a very narrow entrance into a very wide, at the back of the lot, very wide. So that addresses this particular issue. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. If you could imagine a pie-shaped lot coming off of a cul-de-sac, that would, if they could, reduce it down to just the driveway width, it would be safety issues with driveways backing into each other. And there's an anticipation that on that public right-of-way, there needs to be visitor parking. And if we don't have some separation between those driveways, we get no visitor parking on a cul-de-sac.
Just to follow up on that, if I may, is that my experience was one time we had utility lines going across that, and it created another problem for a lot of folks. So hopefully this will be able to address that as well.
Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you.
Great.
I yield.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Number 5, Just looks like it's a standard requesting to apply for a grant for our fire department. Pretty good explanation in the details. Okay, so we'll just move along. Our police department, 6, 7, and 8. Need a mic? There we go. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Council. My name is Scott Sisson, I'm the captain with the Rapid City Police Department, and we're here to request the authorization of several police vehicles, specifically 6 Dodge Durangos, 1 Dodge Charger, and 2 Jeep Cherokees. These vehicles are meant to replace our aging fleet. As of right now, as it stands today, we have 25 vehicles in our police fleet with over 100,000 miles on them. In 2020, we did not purchase any police patrol cars for our fleet. Our last purchase was in 2019, and we're somewhat playing a little bit of catch up right now. Some of the vehicles that these vehicles will replace are have 150,000 miles on it for a Ford Explorer. It's a 2015, so we're going on 6 years old, and usually the lifespan for a police vehicle is right around that 4-year mark. Another vehicle has 149,000 miles, another vehicle has 137,000 miles, another vehicle has 133, 132, and one has 121 vehicles. And since our last vehicle purchase in 2019, we've actually total lost or deadlined 3 vehicles. One vehicle was hit in an intersection. Another vehicle was rammed and completely disabled during a pursuit of a stolen vehicle. And another vehicle suffered a cracked engine block. So these vehicles, they have followed, for this purchase, have followed our normal budgeting purposes. These are all vehicles that were budgeted for, and we're following the normal purchasing process. And I think it's also important to add that as these vehicles age, the maintenance costs go up. For example, just the other day I was driving to work, and a tow truck was towing one of our older vehicles out of the Sally Port because it had a broken radiator. So just in the past few months, we've had vehicles go down, some of our older vehicles go down for 2 radiators. We've had to replace camshafts, lifters, and transmissions in these vehicles as they age. And I think it's also important to note that these vehicles run 24/7. One shift comes off, the next shift that's coming on grabs the vehicles, and they head out. So they run pretty much all day, and we average a little over 3,000 miles a month per vehicle. So anywhere from 36 to 40,000 miles per year on a car.
You did say these are budgeted, correct?
These were budgeted in our budget, yes.
Great,
They're in our 2021 budget.
Mr. Nordstrom, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a title correction, or the number 7 should read Dodge Charger instead of Dodge Charge. So just a title correction. And then a question for the lieutenant, if I may. Lieutenant Sitz.
Captain.
Captain. I'm sorry?
Captain.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's all right. You guys change so fast. I mean, it's hard to keep up with you. I used to work with him when he was a sector officer, so.
That's right.
Thank you. Can you address the maintenance on the vehicles, or is the street department mechanics still doing that service for you folks?
They do when they can. Of course, if the vehicle's still under warranty, we'll go back to the dealership. It's also important to mention that all these vehicles we're requesting to purchase are all purchased locally at the Liberty Jeep within state bid. But yes, the street department does do maintenance when they can for us. And sometimes we have to sit into the dealership because sometimes the issues are just more complex and need more dedicated time.
One final question, I hope I'm not embarrassing anybody, but how is the service for the mechanics that are doing the work on your vehicles?
They do an awesome job. They get us in and they take good care of us.
I'll pass that along, thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. Jones and then Mr. Weifenbach.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Captain, I just want to make a couple comments. In total support of this purchase, I was talking with the chief the other day and asking some questions about these things, and you explained it almost exactly the way that he did, so very good. Thank you very much. If we look at the big picture with our police department, this is more than just purchasing vehicles. This is investing in the safety of our officers, the morale of our officers. Who wants to come to work, you know, and drive a car that they're not going to feel safe in? If we want to get and keep good officers, and we have a wonderful police department right now, if we want to keep them, bring in good people, we need to invest in our police department. And like you said, they put all purchases on hold in 2020, as we asked folks to do because of money concerns. And as the captain said, these are all budgeted. I just encourage us to totally support this purchase as a show of good faith and investment in our police department. Thank you.
Safety and morale you mentioned, but also productivity. You don't want them breaking down when they're in pursuit or trying to do their job. Helps us run a better police department. Mr. Weifenbach, all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just, Captain, does this, you mentioned there was some machines that are completely out of commission.
Correct.
Does this bring us back to even par? I mean, a few years back, I recall that we had let things slide so far that the detectives were sharing cars and it just like crazy. I mean, if the people and the constituents in our city expect anything, they expect, you know, good roads and water and sewer, and they expect police officers to make it to their doors. And so I'm wondering, does this just take us even, or does this get us, I mean, does this fix the ones that have been damaged and put into the junk pile already? Do we need more than this, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, this will not make us even. Like I said, we've lost 3 vehicles since 2019. It will take one off the table. One of the vehicles I'd mentioned that was rammed during a pursuit that was deemed a total loss. That vehicle did have 121,000 miles, so one of these vehicles will replace that vehicle. However, we'll still be down other vehicles that were deemed
So
total loss.
if you had the best case scenario, would you need more than what's on here? 2 more cars, 3 more cars, one of the pickup trucks? I mean, is that the pickup truck they bought 10 years ago? The one they're still driving?
Well,
Yeah,
last year,
modified.
we purchased a pickup truck for our quality of life unit through COVID grants,
Okay.
not out of our budget, but we still, we did purchase a pickup in 2019, but we do have a couple of older pickups also.
My thing's got to be old.
We have a
It's
few of
older
those.
than mine. I guess I'll ask you again, is this even enough to get you guys in a comfortable position? I mean, we've seen the spikes in crime in our community, and I think the chair had made a reference to the fact that, you know, we want to keep our productivity. We have a hard time right now just even keeping officers. And sometimes it's not all about pay. Sometimes it's about equipment, safety, you know, making sure that you guys are comfortable and that we're giving you what you want. We're here. This is what we do. This is what we're assigned to do. So, I mean, we need to know. If you don't tell us, we don't know. If you walk out here, we assume that this is going to take you to the point that you guys are happy. So if you have, I mean, come Monday or whatever, you want to talk to us in between. If you think, you know, you get with Chief and you decide that maybe there's a shot at, you need more equipment or whatever, we'd like to know.
Okay, yes, definitely. Thank you for the question. And I think, you know, to make us even, 2 other vehicles would be awesome. It would be perfect. However, you know, we know that we're trying to be fiscally responsible.
That's okay. That's for us to figure out.
So,
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. Good discussion. Again, moving right along, Director Sumption, 9 and 10. 9 looks pretty standard.
9 is a standard for our volunteers to be covered under workers' comp. Number 10, for the year, we ended up 3.32% over 2019. When you consider back in March and April, we thought we were going to have a 12.5% decrease in sales tax. This is very favorable. Looking at December specifically, I honestly thought we would see a loss with the loss of the LNI, and we are up over 5% just in that month alone. So people are shopping locally for Christmas. The internet sales tax has helped. It's a combination of those things, as well as I think we still had some visitors still in December. So very, very positive.
Great, good to hear it. Okay, Mr. Jones, go ahead.
Thank you. Finance Director Sumption, you mentioned the internet tax. Is there a way for us to know what we got from that itself, just the internet sales tax?
No,
Okay, thank you.
the state doesn't break it down.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I'm going to ask an indulgence. I have to leave to go back to work at 1:30, and I have a question about item 30, which is Finance
Please.
Department. May
Is
I
that okay?
ask at this time?
Great.
Okay, thank you very much. Item
Skipping
30
to
is the
30.
changing wards and precincts around. I was looking at the map, and I was paying attention to Ward 1, and I noticed there were some changes in Ward 1, some areas leaving Ward 1, some areas coming into Ward 1. I'm just curious how that process was done and how people are notified that those changes take place.
So there are no voters in these areas that we are adding or removing at this time. But the GIS department, when we annex or de-annex any land into or out of the city, the GIS works with the county to make sure that they are involved to put us into not only a ward but a precinct for the city, as well as how that would impact the school district and the county as well. So it's a working relationship that we continue to have.
So no voters were impacted one way or the other?
Correct.
No voters were harmed in the creating of that map?
Nope,
Okay.
not this time.
Great, Mr. Solomon.
Thank you. Thank you
Mr.
for
Solomon.
allowing that. I appreciate it.
Great, great.
I will be leaving.
All right.
Okay.
Oh. Are you still going? I'm done. Okay, just making sure. Pauline, thanks for the update. I agree. To have that kind of closure to 2020 is pretty remarkable. I think it's, I only came on halfway through this year, or not even, but I think that we need to acknowledge all of the department directors and you for, especially in the spring, when you didn't know much, of really managing resources, stewarding everything, really having to watch, everything, and obviously some things slowed down, but that management that all of you were asked to do, to conserve and to make sure we could get through this year. And then as the year went on, obviously we learned what we can and can't do. And I think also just knowing that Pauline has done a good job of refinancing bonds and helping us manage those expenses as well, because you just never know what's going to happen. But I know that many of you sacrificed for a good deal of the year. And I just want you to know that we see that, we notice it, we do appreciate it. And obviously we are all very encouraged by how 2020 ended, at least in terms of financially. Obviously there's been impact beyond that. But hopefully with 2021, we'll see bigger and brighter things. And I'm grateful that visitors felt welcomed in Rapid City and that we were able to keep the city and state open so that people can learn what it's like to live free. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to move to Public Works. Mr. Kuntz, thank you for being here to represent Public Works. Could you please do 11 through 26 and then maybe take 31 as well, just for those of us that have some time constraints?
Sure.
Maybe just kind of go through there. Do I have any colleagues that want to pull any items? I don't think we should go through this one by one by one by one. Do we have any specific questions? Mr. Stroman, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dan, on item 21, the Unidell Drive Reconstruction Project.
Yeah.
Is that just between Wildwood Drive and, does it go up Wildwood Drive too, or is it all on that, just that little spur of Unidell? I looked at the project map and I couldn't really tell.
If it's not obvious on the project map, I have to defer that and get get an answer back to you.
Okay. And it also says in the description that you're actually putting shoulders in there, is that correct?
Yes, there'll be some shoulders. Not all this area really is suitable for curb and gutter, so it'll be a combination of a rural section, if you would, and some curb and gutter where needed to make the drainage work correctly.
Okay. So yeah, there isn't any curb and gutter currently on there existing on Unidell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any
Should
other
I-
items?
Can I go with a couple more quick ones?
Sure, go for it.
On 25 and 26,
Yes.
do we have like 2 membranes that need replacement?
Yeah, these membranes are part of our Jackson Springs water treatment plant. That plant, although it seems very new, it was constructed in 2013 is when it came online. There are 5 what we call treatment trains that are part of that plant that actually filter the water that we bring into the plant. Last year, we replaced all of the membrane modules in one of the trains. And so these 2 contracts are to replace the membrane modules in the remaining 4 trains. And why there are 2 contracts is we'll do 2 of the trains under the first contract. Once they are in operating correctly and we're comfortable with them, then we'll move right into replacing the membrane modules in the last 2 trains. So it's not just a one thing we put in, there are 100 modules in each train. So we have to bring in the manufacturer to make sure they're put in correctly, the system is tuned, and everything works correctly.
And then are these periodically inspected, or do they just have a schedule for replacement?
No, they're continually monitored through the control system that we have out there. The staff out there is trained and is able to repair them when needed. And so these are just essentially a wear part. When you say a membrane, it's just a polymer fiber is what it is. So it's not like a pump that just fails catastrophically, they just wear out over time. So we repair them, keep them clean until they just can't be cleaned anymore and they're just wore out, and then we replace them.
Thank you very much, sir. I yield.
Mr. Nordstrom, did you have a question about a specific item?
So to accommodate Alderman Jones, let him go first, and then.
Do you have anything to?
Because mine might
Okay.
take a little bit longer. Okay.
None?
I didn't. You can go, Richie, you feel
Okay.
that good.
Thank you. Which
Thank
one
you.
are you pulling?
I'm sorry?
Which one did you have a question on?
It's these last 2, 25, 26, in combination with 11 and 12, and we'll touch a little bit on 13. The question I have for you, let's see, Assistant Public Works Director Goon, let's see, the pumps that are going down or not in service right now, and the total volume of production in conjunction with 25 and 26, are we going to be okay?
Yes, we're confident. In fact, we won't take anything offline that impedes our ability to put water in the system or our supply. So it'll just be a matter of coordinating the timing. Yes, 5 and 6 are currently down. Again, those, all of our wells were put in the same era. In the late 80s to the mid 90s, the city diversified its water supply from just Rapid Creek to a combination of Rapid Creek and these wells. And replacing pumps is, a pump will last anywhere from 4 to 7 years. So it's something that we do periodically. The electrical equipment is 25 to 30 years old. That's how long electrical power equipment lasts. And these 2 happen to go out pretty close to each other. But it's just a matter of the age of that infrastructure and needing to be replaced.
Then item number 13 on well 9, that one is not all the way down, but just parts of it need to be serviced.
Yes, well 9 is a very high-producing well. About 2 to 3 years ago, we went in and replaced the electrical equipment. Right now, it's online, but we can tell that the pump's efficiency is going down. So instead of waiting for it to absolutely fail, we're going to go in and replace the pump before that happens. And we'll coordinate, we won't take that down when the other two are down.
Timing, coordination, and all of that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
And it also looks like all of these are budgeted, so those.
Yes.
Yes, all these
so that's
items are
always a good
budgeted
thing.
items.
Great, we
Thank you.
appreciate that. I do think we have a question down here.
Yep.
Mr. Reichenbach, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just for the sake of the council, can you tell us where well 6 is located?
Okay, those are, you can ask me hard questions now. No,
We can-
well 6 is up near the City Springs area.
Okay.
There's a small park up there, I think it's called City Springs Park. So well 6 just sits up behind that. It's to the, I would call it west of the Game Fish and Parks campus up
And
there.
then well 5.
And well 5 is over behind the, used to be the Canyon Lake Senior Center, I think it's the activity center. So between that and Camp Rapid, it sits back in.
And 9.
9 is over behind Meadowbrook School, right next to Meadowbrook Golf Course.
And then we'll go back to the membranes on these. When this project was in, I was part of this, I remember, and that this was something we would have anticipated, that these
Yes.
membranes would come to this. So is this the first time they've been changed, or?
Yes, this is the first time.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and so then this is built into the water rate system, right?
It's
These
built into the
prices.
water rate system, and in fact, we set aside, when we put them in, we created a fund specifically for this purpose.
Right.
And we put X amount of money into that fund every year.
And that's so the money was set aside for these capital
Yes.
improvements, and we know that these membranes, again, are gonna be wore out. We know that the pumps are gonna wear out again, and we know the electric's gonna wear out again, so, thank you.
Yes.
Great. Any question on 31, just to conclude the public works portion? Pretty standard on an ordinance. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coons. We appreciate your
All right,
input.
thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay. All right. And it looks like we are left with community development, 27 through 29. Director Young. There you go.
Yeah, we'll turn time over to Michelle Schulke for items 27 through 29.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Schulke. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 27 and 28 are requests to sign the contracts with Pennington County Health and Human Services for their rent and mortgage assistance program that is provided through the CARES Act funds. And 29 is requesting approval of the second amendment to fiscal year 2020 annual action plan, and that is due to the second tranche of CDBG CARES Act funds we received, and going over the allocation of those funds and those projects.
Great. Pretty straightforward. Mr. Nordstrom.
Thank you. Ms. Schulke, the number 27, yes, number 27 and 28 both have to do with Pennington County Health and Human Services. Are they going to be part of the presentation Monday evening, or have you been able to work up some kind of presentation for them, or are they going to come and speak to us?
Yeah, that's a great question. They will not be part of the presentation on Monday. However, I will request that they do come present, because there has been a significant investment in that organization, so they can discuss with the council what those funds are being used for.
Thank you. And this may not be in your wheelhouse, is that we've got I forgot the bill number, but anyway, there's a housing associated with that. Is that connected with this as well, that's going through the state legislature?
House Bill 155 is unrelated to this. However,
Unrelated,
there is talk that perhaps there'll be a significant investment for workforce housing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other?
We'll leave that alone for a while. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I think that, do we have any public comment? I didn't see anybody. Okay, well, I thank my colleagues for working through this. I think this went pretty well. Any other final comments?
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone that set all this up. This was wonderful.
Great.
Whoever did it.
And I encourage everyone just to, if you have any other questions between now and the council
Madam Chair,
meeting.
I'm sorry. Did we want to make sure everybody knew what to expect at our next meetings like this, that it'll be in a different place? And is the format the same? Any changes to this meeting for the next time?
I'll defer to Jim Gilbert.
We are still limited in terms of audio equipment. We're looking at options. But this room right here has an HVAC issue that would make it difficult to record audio in. Upstairs, the best we could do is those tabletop ones that don't really record audio. So we'll probably be in here at least for the next time. Any audio equipment always comes with a big price tag, so we're looking at that.
And as the notice goes out, it'll let us know where we will be and what time and
that we still would like it to be broadcast for folks who aren't able to be here.
we'd like to have it recorded. Yep, absolutely. All right, everybody, thank you so very much. Thank you. Does you have enough time, Pat?
Yeah, good.
Great.